Today, no detours. The need to explain yourself is stealing your psychological freedom. If every decision needs a because for someone to approve it, your life has been hijacked by external validation. In the next few minutes, you'll see why stopping the self-justification is the turning point that separates a fragmented self from an integrated one, and how to apply it today without fights, without proofs, without speeches. There's a quiet, almost invisible behavior that dominates relationships and workplaces. The compulsion to explain yourself. It's not an isolated gesture, it's a system. A way of operating that turns every conversation into a courtroom, every decision into a defense, and every emotion into evidence. At first, it looks like kindness. It looks like care for others, a wish to be clear, an attempt to avoid misunderstandings. But beneath the polish is a wound. The fear of not belonging without justification. It starts when the mind learns that existing only counts if it's understood. And each time that belief gets reinforced, identity steps out of itself and into someone else's eyes. This internal script turns communication into defense, emotion into argument, and identity into a project to please an audience. You're not speaking to be true, you're speaking to be acquitted. You're not feeling to orient yourself, you're feeling to assemble a convincing dossier. Little by little, the I becomes a defendant, and defendants don't breathe, they justify. The body learns to prepay explanations like a toll to cross your own bridge. At home, it becomes anxiety about clearing everything up. At work, it's an emotional report disguised as alignment. In friendship, it's the fear of seeming cold if you don't add extra context. This excess narrative has a cost. It drains presence and devalues the word. The more you explain, the less each sentence weighs. The more detail, the less substance. The listener stops meeting a person and starts consuming a defense. And defenses are tiring because they don't invite meeting, they invite judgment. The result is cruel. To be accepted, you move away from yourself. To be understood, you stop being whole, until the bill arrives. Relationships sustained by justifications charge interest and resentment. Teams sustained by endless arguments lose focus, deadlines, and respect. And you, who only wanted peace, realize you live in permanent negotiation. That's why the shift isn't about speaking prettier. It's about stopping the installment plan on your soul. When the explaining ends, breathing returns. When the why rests, the enough is born. That's our starting point. Stopping the explanations isn't rudeness, it's inner alignment. Rudeness is when you hurt to win. Alignment is when you stand so you don't lose yourself. If you live in justifications, you outsource your authority. If you sustain silence, you reclaim it. Authority isn't volume, it's center of gravity. When the center returns inward, the bargaining ends. And this shift changes everything. Presence, boundaries, choices, and the kind of relationships you keep. Presence, because your word regains specific weight. Boundaries, because your no longer apologizes to exist. Choices, because they leave the plebiscite and return to criteria. Relationships, because what relied on your insecurity dissolves, and what respects your contour blooms. Stopping the explanations is closing the invisible court where you were both defendant and prosecutor of your own life. It's trading infinite defense for sufficient sentences. It's choosing a period instead of an eternal semicolon. It's not being harsh, it's being whole. It's not refusing dialogue, it's refusing to auction your identity. When identity stops being a product, dignity returns as the standard. And when dignity is the standard, the world learns the tone to address you. You don't become intransigent, you become clear. You don't close doors, you close cycles. You don't push people away, you push games away. There's an immediate psychological effect. Performance anxiety loses fuel. Without the obligation to convince, the mind breathes and the body lands. The silence that used to feel empty begins to sound like presence. Presence teaches without explaining. Presence sets boundaries without attacking. Presence invites those who are ready and bores those who wanted control. That's the turn. Get out of the prove me script and step into the align me script. Those who demand proof of your feelings aren't ready for your truth. Those who recognize your alignment don't need a new emotional PowerPoint every conversation. From here on, the path is practical. Short sentences, breath before speech, criteria before context, clean endings instead of long justifications. You're not learning to debate better. You're learning not to sell yourself. The result isn't noise, it's caliber. Fewer words, more direction. Fewer explanations, more coherence. Fewer why, more enough. And from that enough, your life starts operating at another frequency. Picture a meeting. It doesn't have to be big. 4 people, 1 agenda, 1 deadline. You listen. You feel in your body that something's off. It's subtle. A weight in the stomach, a tight chest, a tense jaw. While they speak, your mind runs. It starts building a verbal PowerPoint to convince. Again, invisible slides, mental bullets, polished justifications. And with that, you leave your axis. You lose your voice to gain an audience. This is where the scene changes. In that instant, run the mirror test. If no one understands me, is this still true for me? Don't answer with your intellect. Answer with your body. If your body says yes, return to center. Choose the anchor sentence. That doesn't resonate with me. And stop there. That stop there is the courageous act that changes the room, because it ends the mental marathon of proving the obvious to those who don't want to see it. It also returns the labor of understanding to where it belongs, outside of you. Those who want to understand can ask respectfully. Those who want to manipulate will find a wall. You're not refusing dialogue. You're refusing the courtroom. Carl Jung would call this return to center a gesture toward the self. It's not about being right. It's about not abandoning the core. Individuation, as Jung proposed, demands this move. Step out of the pleasing persona and return to the sustaining axis. In the meeting scene, persona is the character that convinces, axis is the presence that decides. Now watch the practical choreography. Someone proposes a path. You feel misalignment. The old version of you thinks, I need to explain better, bring data, tell a story. The version being born now breathes, checks the mirror, and says, that doesn't resonate with me. Silence. 2 seconds that feel like 2 minutes. Your mind begs for an appendix. Don't give it. If the right question comes, offer criteria, not self-defense. I'm prioritizing X because of A, B, and C. And you close. I'll move forward this way. No soap opera. The mirror test has 3 layers. Layer 1, truth. Is it true for me even without consensus? Layer 2, need. Do I need to say anything beyond the anchor? Layer 3, sufficiency. Is what I've said enough for today's decision? If the answers are yes, yes, and yes, stop. If any is no, offer minimal criteria, and close again. You don't owe the world a monologue. You owe the world your integrity. The rest is theater. And if the room tightens, if the whys start cascading, use the same mirror. I've answered. I won't get into justifications. If it helps, I can share objective criteria. Otherwise, let's decide by test and timeline. It's calm. It's clean. It's sufficient. Jung would remind us, when the ego serves approval too much, it moves away from the self. In those moments, the anchor protects the center. You don't fight, you don't flee, you don't bow. You stand. Notice what changes in you. The internal tremor eases. The mind stops running outward. The voice loses its hurry. There's a new weight in your word, the weight of not negotiating the essential. Notice what changes around you. Those who wanted a show lose steam. Those who wanted clarity move closer. Those who wanted control encounter boundaries. The conversation gains contour. If needed, keep variations of the same anchor with the same spirit. In this format, I won't proceed. I won't take part in this dynamic. I'd like to close this here. They all say the same thing. Your axis is in place. And if the matter is too important for a doesn't resonate, then bring criteria, not confession. I'll prioritize X for reasons A, B, and C. I'll reassess in D days. You're not justifying who you are. You're communicating how you decide. That's relational maturity. Train the mirror outside meetings. In messages, write the anchor. Stop, stand up, get water. Come back and reread. If it's still true, send it. On calls, keep a card with the sentence in sight. Read, breathe, stay quiet. In hard talks, make yourself a promise. 2 rounds of 4-7-8 before answering. The body must know you're with you. The mirror isn't a language trick. It's an ontological reminder. Before any audience, you must be able to face yourself. If a decision stands in the mirror, it stands in the room. If it falls in the mirror, it's not lack of argument. It's lack of alignment. In that case, thank the truth and adjust course. In Jung's individuation, the inner mirror replaces the outer showcase. You stop measuring value by reaction and start checking coherence by your center. That's the passage from character to author. And authors don't ask permission to write their own line. Final test. Someone pushes, you breathe, you look in the mirror, you say the anchor, you close. Anxiety protests, then quiets. You didn't defeat anyone. You defeated the old script. And each time you defeat the script, the room learns how to speak to you. That's how the mirror works. Quiet, steady, repeated. It doesn't change others first. It changes how you offer yourself. And when your offering changes, relationships move to the right places. Take the mirror to the next meeting. Take it to the next hard conversation. Take it to the next message that starts with, "Sorry, it's just that." Stop the sentence before the "just that." Replace it with, "That doesn't resonate with me." And stop there. Why do we explain ourselves? Because once it worked to avoid punishment, rejection, or ridicule. Because at some point explaining bought a minute of peace. Because the mind learned that a good reason is a shield against pain. It became a survival tactic. And survival tactics, when turned into habits, sabotage adult integrity. Compulsive explanation is identity negotiation. It's trying to buy peace at the cost of coherence. Carl Jung would call this a move away from the self. When the persona takes the wheel, the center loses direction. The persona wants to please, the self wants to align. The persona wants acceptance, the self wants truth. And in that gap, you lose yourself. The mechanism begins with a small trigger, a crooked look, a question with a charging tone, a silence that feels like disapproval. The body lights up, the heart speeds, the breath shortens, the mind rushes to assemble a brief, and without noticing, you become your own defense attorney. Does it work? For a few seconds, yes. The other person relaxes. You feel relief. The brain records the reward and asks for more. But the bill comes afterward. Guilt, resentment, fatigue, and deep down, a familiar feeling. I betrayed myself again. Jung spoke about the shadow. What we deny in ourselves rules from behind the curtain. In the compulsion to explain, the shadow is the fear of rejection. To avoid facing that fear, you offer narrative. To avoid touching the edge of no, you offer context. To avoid losing the bond, you lose your axis. At home, this becomes endless didactics. You apologize for being tired. You explain preferring silence. You reframe sadness as just stress. You sell your soul in tiny installments. At work, criteria get replaced by soap opera. Instead of, "Let's go with X because of ABC," you get, "Let me explain this just right." You pause and read the subtext. Explanation became your entry pass. Without the pass, you feel you can't get in. But entering this way charges a fee. And the fee is your presence. There's also a language economy here. The more currency, the less value. The more words, the less weight. Respect doesn't grow with speech. It grows with contour. Compulsive explaining tries to regulate the other's anxiety, and by extension, your own. You become the manager of someone else's nerves. And when it works, the job traps you. It becomes your function, the person who always clarifies. And functions become cages. How to break it without breaking bridges. Restore the right order. Identity is non-negotiable. Process can be discussed. Trade confession for criteria. Instead of, "I'm like this because," say, "We'll go this way because of A, B, and C." Criteria invites conversation. Identity can breathe. Jung insisted, individuation requires you to withstand the falling image, even the image of being always understanding. You don't lose humanity by speaking less. You gain density. 3 signs the mechanism is running in the background. An urge to send a follow-up audio just to clarify. Adding just one more detail after you've already said enough. Explaining a boundary as if it were an apology. 3 immediate antidotes. An anchor sentence with a period. I won't take part in this dynamic. A brief criterion. I chose X based on ABC. A clean ending. That's it for today. Simple isn't easy. Simple is essential. They'll ask you why. You'll itch to deliver. Breathe. Remember Jung. When the ego serves applause, the self gets sick. Serve the center. Let the contour speak. If you must open, open with criteria, not confession. If not, close calmly. The mechanism is also chemical. The reward circuit wants approval. Breaking it requires abstinence, 90 seconds of emptiness. Then presence arrives, then respect, and finally something better than approval, Coherence. Coherence is magnetic. It doesn't make noise. It makes weight. That's how the mechanism dissolves. Not in the force of argument, in the firmness of contour. Less explanation, more axis, less buying peace, more integrity. That's the ground for the rest of the episode. If you've come this far, you can see the whole design. The compulsion to explain began as survival, became habit, and now trades your identity for minutes of peace. Jung would call that trade a move away from the self, when the pleasing persona takes the wheel and the center loses direction. The turn isn't shouting louder or collecting better arguments. It's bringing the center back in and letting your word regain weight. When the weight returns, the theater ends. Ties that relied on your insecurity lose the stage. Ties that respect your contour take the front row. The mirror scene showed the smallest gesture that changes everything. Feel, test the truth in the body, say the anchor. That doesn't resonate with me. And stop there. It seems small. It's structural. Stop the dossier. Return the work of understanding to those who need to understand, and protect your axis from the invisible court. Jung would remind you, individuation means bearing the falling image, even the image of being always understanding. The hidden mechanism runs on simple chemistry. After each explanation, approval becomes a reward, and the brain asks for more. Breaking the cycle means bearing seconds of approval withdrawal in exchange for weeks of autonomy. Discomfort is the toll of freedom. A 90-second window is enough for the physiological wave of emotion to lose force. If your boundary stands for 90 seconds, the mind stops demanding justification and starts respecting the period. That's self-retention. Less energy burned on theater, more presence to create, decide, and love with criteria. Inner authority is not harshness. It's repeated coherence. When coherence shows up in short, quiet sentences, it magnetizes respect without promising anything. The world adjusts how it speaks to those who use periods, not from fear, but from predictability. And predictability is the silent foundation of respect. Final contrast to lock it in. Performance life needs an audience, applause, and explanation. Integral life needs center, criteria, and silence. One buys cheap peace and charges you later. The other costs courage now and repays you with dignity and interest. From everything we built, here are 3 golden signals for your pocket. If it's true for you and necessary to say enough and close. If why is used as a control password, answer with an anchor and criteria, not confession. If anxiety comes, breathe, count to 90, hold the contour. The body learns first, the mind follows. Carl Jung would say, when the self leads, the persona rests, and with it, the compulsion to explain. In the silence that follows, a presence appears that educates the room without raising its voice. Respect stops being requested and becomes the natural consequence of not negotiating the essential. And here's what's next: how to sustain this stance in critical conversations without turning to stone. Combining explicit intention, concise criteria, and clean endings. If this episode was your turn, write your short sentence, up to 7 words, now. Keep it in your pocket, on your screen, in your voice. Use it in the next meeting, the next call, the first why that shows up. You don't need to explain who you are. You need to sustain who you are. Shorter dialogues with pauses increase listener retention because the brain processes dense, predictable blocks better. Silence and a period are allies for being remembered. That's how your life changes frequency, not with noise, but with gravity. When explaining ends, presence begins, and the world learns through your silence how to treat you. If something in you settled into silence, stay. Here, we walk less in noise and more in meaning. Subscribe and come with us, with clarity, presence, and time.